There are many characters in the Bible whose lives we would consider worthy to emulate. And one of those characters is found in the New Testament by the name of Gaius. And the Apostle John writes a short letter. It's one of the shortest epistles in the New Testament. And he writes it to Gaius. And he opens the epistle with the words to the elder, "My dear friend Gaius, whom I love in truth." And I want to share with you from that short epistle this morning some things that we learn about the life of Gaius that are worthy of emulating. Can I suggest to you, first of all, he was a man who gained the respect of the apostle. Listen to how the apostle addresses him. "To the elder, to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth." Here is a man who had won the heart of the apostle. And winning the hearts and respects of others is something I believe is good for every Christian. In fact, it's a biblical thing. Listen to what is recorded of the early disciples by Luke in Acts 2. "They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere heart, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people." And may God help us to live such lives that will gain the respect of others. The second thing I want to highlight about Gaius is this. He was a man who enjoyed good spiritual health. Listen to what the apostle says of him in verse 2. "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may also go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well." Or in the old authorized, "even as your soul prospers." We could read into this statement that may have been possibly some health issues with Gaius. However, the apostle makes it clear that spiritually he was in good health. And it's important that we take check not only of our physical well-being, but also of our spiritual well-being. That makes sure that the line of communication between us and God in prayer is open. Making sure that on a regular basis we take in the word of God, that we might grow thereby, that we might be spiritually healthy. The third thing we note about Gaius from this little epistle is this. He was a man committed to truth. Listen to what John says of him in verse 3. "It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth." You see, even way back then in the early days, in the days of the Apostle John, false teachers had crept into the church, and people were following all kinds of fanciful teachings and heresy. But Gaius was a man anchored to the truth. And may God help us in these days when there are so many fanciful teachings going about, even in the name of evangelicalism out there. May we be faithful to the word of God, because this book is our anchor, is our final authority in all matters of doctrine and of practice. And then the fourth thing about Gaius in this little epistle is this. He was a man who walks his talk. "It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continued to walk in it. I have no greater joy than to hear my children are walking in the truth." He wasn't one of those leaders who was just talking the walk, but he was also walking the talk. And it's important that what we confess, we live, or otherwise we become hypocrites. We shouldn't be those who say, "do as I say and not as I do." But we should also, as Christians, be those who can declare with the Apostle Paul, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And then the fifth thing I want to draw to your attention about Gaius is this. He was a man who was kind towards his fellow Christians. Dear friends, you are faithful in what you are doing dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers and sisters, even though they are strangers to you. He was one of those guys who was willing to help others. You see, as Christians, we are not an only child. We all belong to a family, to the family of God. And we have that God-given responsibility to help one another. And then he was a man, finally, who openly displays Christian love. Verse 6, they have testified of your love before the church. And of course we know, Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. And may God help us to follow in the footsteps of Gaius.